at what point does the baby become the baby? At what point does life begin?
From your perspective.
Yeah, from your perspective.
Because we have a real biologist here.
Yes.
So you might know what a woman is.
You might know what a baby is.
As an OB-GYN, let's just start with talking a little bit about how you think through your ethical framework, the philosophical framework, but also, so your obligation as a doctor and that ethical obligation, but also thinking about your faith, and then how do you use those frameworks as you're advising patients?
Right. So lots of parts to that question, but let me just start with just some ethical basics of ethics that we're taught in medical school. And so there's several basic principles. One of those is beneficence, which means doing good for the patient. And, as an obstetrician, I have two patients. I have the mother and I have the baby. So the first thing is beneficence, doing the right thing, doing good for the patient. The second thing is malfeasance, meaning not doing wrong. We often say, do no harm. And then the third principle is autonomy. So the patient, I can advise the patient and inform her, and she may choose not to go along that road, and that's fine. People have their own autonomy. So I may a patient with cancer, I may recommend a treatment, and they may say no, and that's fine. That's her autonomy. And then also justice, which is treating people with equality. So those are some guiding principles, but when you look at those in every aspect of medicine, they really apply. And like I said, an important thing is I have two patients, and so I have to do that for both of my patients, the mother and the baby.
As a Christian, then does that interface at all in your conversations with people, or do you kind of go into that room, thinking about it through sort of the medical ethic lens? Maybe you could talk a little bit about how your faith interacts with that or doesn't.
Sure. So, well, I agree with those principles. I think those principles are consistent with my faith. My faith guides all that I do. So I do have certain, the field of OB-GYN is just laden with ethical issues. So obviously that my faith guides how I treat those things, including abortion. So now we are told, we're always taught, don't be biased with your patients. Well, the thing is, we're all biased. And so my responsibility is to provide information, to advise the patient, to tell her the truth. But in the end, she makes a decision.
One of the things that I am seeing a lot is the fact that in the church or in the culture, people don't agree on when life actually begins. And what I'm hearing you say is that you have two patients, the mother and the baby. At what point does the baby become the baby? At what point does life begin?
From your perspective.
Yeah, from your perspective.
Because we have a real biologist here.
Yes.
So you might know what a woman is.
You might know what a baby is.
I love it. Yes, I do know what a woman and a baby are. So life begins at conception. I believe that not just because of my faith, but biology shows us that. When a sperm and egg meet and the DNA combine, that one cell organism has the unique genetic makeup. Its DNA is different than any other human being. Its sex, its eye color, those things are already determined at the moment of conception. And I think that people used to say it wasn't clear. I think now that science, as we've learned more, scientists are realizing, yes, life begins at conception, but is it really a person? Well, I would believe it's a person at conception as well.
I think I really want to highlight an important point because I don't want it to pass people by, that when the sperm fertilizes the egg and that zygote is formed, that life has its own DNA.
Mm-hmm.
It has its own unique code, and it is different than the mother's DNA. And that is what makes it life, as opposed to saying sperm is life or the egg is life. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, absolutely. You said it well. It's its own unique DNA. It's got 23 pairs of its own chromosomes that come from its mother and father, where a sperm is a cell from the father. It's not a unique human being. I have skin cells, I have hair cells. It's a cell. I mean, it's different than those, but it's not a unique human being. But yet when the egg and the sperm meet at conception, that being has its own set of genetic makeup.